So, hello and welcome. My name is Steve Nobel, and today I'm speaking with Judith Kusel on Ascension and the White Flame of Illumination. And Judith is an inspirational author, a visionary, a pyramid crystalline grid activator. That's really interesting, actually. And soul empowerment consultant, a remarkable teacher who can tap into the cosmic super consciousness fields and bring forth ancient cosmic knowledge. And she lives in the Western Cape, South Africa. Her website, which will go out with the podcast, is judithkusel.com. And hi, Judith.
Hello, Stephen. Thank you for having me on your show. And thank you very much for being here. And everybody, I say hello to you. And I hope that you are all sort of filled with love and light wherever you are. Thank you.
Oh, that's nice. I can see you've got Christmas behind you.
I did my decorations yesterday. So
I've got my Christmas Star Wars jumper. There we are.
Yeah, that's nice.
So, Judith, I know you've had a bit of a journey. How did you get into the work you were doing now?
Well, I was librarian, for 34 years. So it has been in Natal, where I grew up, and it was just as if a whole carpet was pulled under me. My whole life literally sort of disintegrated at that moment, and my whole life work that I've actually worked for all my life. And it was a matter of, sort of like at that stage going into this deep sort of, it's a wake up call in a sense that my old life was disintegrating. And I was going into a stage where I was trying desperately to put all the pieces together. And the more I couldn't, and that was at the stage when South Africa was going through this huge shift, from one to the other. And it was, I literally saw the work that I did all those years just like crumble away. And in that moment, I didn't know who I was anymore. And, it was just like everything that I ever worked for was just taken away from me, everything that I ever had. And and then I got to the stage where I went to the doctor and he said to me, well, Judith, you've got a choice now. You can either take your life back or you will go in for a nervous breakdown, one of the two. And that night I just prayed. I said, well, what am I supposed to do now? I was too young to go on pension, and I didn't know, which way to go, because it was just in that stage where nothing would work for me. Whatever I tried, it didn't work. And then I was taken on a vision. I was actually standing at the edge of the cliff, and I was with my higher guide. And I was shown, that deep in the valley below, there are thousands of people. And I was asked a question. I said, how long will you stand at the edge of this cliff and not go and do the work that you're really called to do? And I was actually shown how does an eagle learn to fly by its mother kicking it out of its nest, and it's got to find its wings and fly. And the next day I put in my resignation, and it was just like this weight had come off me. I had no idea where my life was going. I had no idea what I would do for the rest of my life, but it was just a journey of faith. And I knew that I needed to heal from all that was happening to me at that stage, because things just turned out political, and they turned out in death threats and things like that. So I had all this healing that I needed to do at that stage. And I promised myself I would first find healing, so that whatever. And then a few months later, I was sitting in Sandton in Joburg and attended Dr. DeMartini's breakthrough experience, which helped me a lot to just, dissolve all the emotional charges that I had. And then in 2009, I just knew that I had to go on a journey of rediscovery, because I was seeing energy lines in the earth. I was connecting with crystal pyramid temples that of a white flame and others, and I was drawing them into the maps of Africa, because I was literally shown Africa, and I was literally drawing the lines down Africa, and then realizing that was the spine of the earth, which is the 33-degree longitude line, which goes right through Africa and also South Africa. And at that stage, I had no idea what I was working with. all I knew is that the spinal column, with the return of the white flame that was imminent, it wasn't quite there yet. These centers, the sacred centers of Africa, were waking up with the spine of Africa. And with that, I knew about the white flame. I had a recall where I was in Atlantis, and I was the high priestess of the Temple of a White Flame at that stage. And I was with Thoth of all, it was fine, the Egyptian Thoth, who was also high priest of the Atlantean Irihi priest. And we were standing on top of the apex of this pyramid temple, and the Andromeda forces came and removed this flame because it's a divine mother flame. And it was removed at that stage because they were not wanting people to misuse that power anymore, and the Divine Mother then withdrew. So this was taken for safekeeping to Andromeda. So through my whole journey, that I literally, in a physical journey, got into my car, and I would go where I was led to go to awaken the sacred sites of South Africa as I was going along. But it was also the sacred sites of the spinal column of the earth, because it is actually like a lightning rod. It's a lightning conductor. It's a tuning fork. And our physical spine actually reflects that completely. So it's like as above, so below, as within, so without. It's the same thing as the earth reflects our own spine and our own bodies. So it was a complete journey of rediscovery. And at that stage, it was just leaps of faith. And I go into that whole journey in my book, Why I Was Born in Africa, the untold story of Elysium and the Lion Kingdom, where the whole story of humanity comes out in a different way, because it was Africa is the first continent of the earth. It was firstly created, and the geologists talk about it being the supercontinent. There was only one continent, and that's the supercontinent. And then the first civilization, you must remember that the inner civilization was that of Agartha, which has always been there. It was a satellite station of the intergalactic fleet. So it's always been there. It's still there. And then the outer crust was formed. And that is when the first paradise on earth actually existed, in Elysium. And that's in Africa. And then the wars of heaven started. And the planet between Jupiter and Mars blew itself up. With that result is that those in Elysium were evacuated, and the Earth was thrown out of orbit with the solar system and the Milky Way galaxy. And of course, everything was in huge chaos. And then the Lion Kingdom was reborn when those from Lyra, who had lost their own home in the wars of heaven, were given permission to actually settle on Earth again. That is basically the story of Africa as it unfolds in ways, and also humanity as it unfolds in ways where we've never been told. We've never been told in history what it is, but it's very important that we find our roots there, because in these civilizations, the white flame was always present. White flame was always present in whatever way it is. It was never not, because the Divine Mother was ever present.
And I ask, well, I've never been to South Africa. To benefit from the white flame, do I have to go there to visit these centers? No.
Now, okay. What I'm trying to get across here is that it is associated with the spine of the earth, but the white flame itself was always associated with this, with Africa, in a sense that she's always held it. In the Crystal Pyramid Temple. That's about the easiest that I can explain it. Okay. But
and so, yeah, go on. Yes.
But remember that the temples itself were just places where it was anchored in, and a place where people, had communities who were working with the white flame and in total service. But you must remember that was over the whole world. It wasn't just based on Africa. It was over the whole world. But the thing is, it's now being returned fully since last year.
Oh, okay.
The white flame has been completely returned, as a Divine Mother returned, and the balance has been restored between the patriarchy, which has its roots in Atlantis, and then now with the feminine divine coming in, it's absolutely beautifully balancing out again.
Wonderful. Yeah, I was going to ask you actually, when did it fully come back in? And is the white flame still very connected to the Andromedan races?
The Andromedan races are very tall and noble race, and very heart-centered, open heart. And that's what the white flame is about the open heart, because it's a Divine Mother flame. It's a flame of love, and it's also the flame of joy, which is one of the attributes, but as much as it's purity and truth and integrity and holding the Ascension flame, it's basically the Ascension flame in a greater degree. But it also holds the sacred geometries, the sacred tones, the sacred numbers, the sacred physics and metaphysics, as well as the pyramid energy. And in that, it's all been returned in about October last year fully. It was sort of coming in, but then it was fully anchored in.
Can I ask you, Judith, about the crystal pyramid temples that you mentioned in Africa? I guess there are elsewhere. What did you discover in these temples? How do you connect with them, and what is the benefit really? Are they still active for us, these temples?
They have been reactivated. That was part of the work that I was doing. The main temples of Elysium and the Lion Kingdoms are actually under the sea, just as much as the one in Atlantis. You know, when all these catastrophes happen, and of course with the Lion Kingdom, it was the war between two brothers, which has been recorded in all the myths in the world. You know, that the war between the brothers, they were twin brothers that were actually, sort of caused that war. And of course, you must remember that landmass tore off. For instance, Australia was part of South Africa. Antarctica was part of South Africa. Madagascar was part of Africa. India was part of Africa. So you can see that these immense catastrophes which happen has changed the whole face of the earth. And of course, the earth has shifted on its axles as well. Now, these temples have always been there and have been held, but the fall of Atlantis, Lord Serapis Bey, actually held the white flame and over Luxor in Egypt.
Yeah.
So, in other words, he is the keeper of a white flame when Atlantis fell. It's almost like he kept it alive for humankind until such a time as the Divine Mother could be returned. Now, with the crystal pyramids, we're like basically powerhouses. That's about the best I can describe them. They always used to have crystal pyramids in the beginning, mainly because they were conduits of power.
Yeah.
And they were all connected. So they basically talked to each other, but they were always there where the sacred ley lines came together, or the crystalline energy grids. So they were basically put exactly on those places of the earth where the telluric energy fields were the highest. So in other words, the temples would amplify this energy, but we were still cosmically tuned in and into the earth. So that basically the apex brings that energy down from the cosmic level and into the earth, and the earth pushes it up. So you've got the two streams of energy constantly interacting and going up and down, just like the Kundalini energy. It's the same thing. And basically, if you would connect to that in the temple, you would be in a much higher state, because that was already in the 7th dimensional state, going up to the 12th. So that was lost to us. So we couldn't tune into that any longer. Also with the Divine Mother withdrawing from Earth for that stage, and when the patriarchy took over. And now, with the balance being returned, these energy centers are completely now activated again. And with that, the sacred sites on the earth are activated because all the sacred sites were on the telluric energy field activated.
Oh.
You look at Stonehenge, for instance, that's a very sacred place. Avebury and those places are very, very sacred sites, which were all goddess sites. Chartres Cathedral in France was a goddess site. You look at Versailles was a goddess site. So all these sites were later built, churches were built over them, etc. But it's not to say that that energy was ever lost. But the architecture of the pyramid actually amplifies it.
Yeah, I've been to all these places you mentioned, Stonehenge and Avebury. Well, Glastonbury is another place I go to twice a year usually. That's another very powerful. Can you mention some of around the world, the sites that you find is particularly strong with this energy?
Montsegur in southern France. Because that's why the Cathars had the main hold there, was in Montsegur. Montsegur is very, very ancient. It holds the pyramid energy in a very, very high degree. And it was always a place of a divine mother. That's Montsegur in France. But it also holds the flame of illumination, which means that those who work with the white flame are illumined. They become see-through, literally. Because the human state is the highest state that you can be in. And interestingly, there were soul groups that were always the keepers of the white flame, and that's the illumined ones and the shining ones. They are the ones that brought this all to humanity, and they are now all incarnated so that this whole shift can be brought into form and being, so that we're shifting into the new earth. We already are there, but it's just a matter now of us being able to ascend into that, because the new earth was already born on the 5th of July, 2020, fully. And the new golden age on the 22nd of February, 2022. That's just this year.
Wow. Can I ask you about the soul group that's incarnated? I guess you meet these people because they must be attracted to your work, I guess.
It's very profound. What happened is that these soul groups they were the wisdom keepers. They're another one, the graces, the loving ones. They are literally the ones that have always helped humanity through times of great darkness. And they were often persecuted because of that. Because they held the flame steady. They held the sacred knowledge steady. But you must remember, this was all in the 7th dimensional state. In Atlantis, we're already on the 5th. So when we fell in Atlantis from the 5th to the 3rd, our upper chakras were closed down. We couldn't access the divinity anymore because in Atlantis, they implanted control boxes in the cranium area, which blocked this whole flow of energy that comes down your spine and your chakras so that you can access divinity within you. So when we were in the 3rd dimension, we couldn't access that anymore. And then these souls always came in as the teachers, the higher guides, the one that were trying to get humanity awakened. And they mostly were held within the mystery schools, because the mystery schools were started by Isis and Osiris when they came during the Lion Kingdom to Earth. They were the king and queen of the Lion Kingdom. So they're very ancient. They're even more ancient than ancient Egypt was. And if you read in the Egyptian scripts, they actually tell you there were many civilizations before us. So they can go back in time and knew there was many before that. Plato says that his grandfather Solon was told by the priest, Atlantis was the last you remembered, but there was much that went beforehand. So Isis and Isis were sons are the ones that started that war. And she saw this coming. And she started the mystery schools with Osiris so that this knowledge would be preserved for all time and space and all eternity. And indeed, those pockets were preserved. And like in Tibet and in places on the earth, they were literally preserved. So, but you must remember that when we sunk into the third, we couldn't go into that frequency, the vibrational frequency of the seventh dimensional state. We couldn't. The knowledge was there, but you must remember that language was not used and the spoken word was not used in Atlantis even, because there was no need for it. You communicated telepathically. So, in other words, and also everything is recorded in energy fields. It's energetic. We couldn't access that anymore. So that is where writing was given, and where also we started speaking words, because that was one way of communicating. But unfortunately, what happened is now you couldn't read everybody's what they're thinking on the forehead. They could lie to you, and they could give you false informations, etc. So you see how the shift is coming, but the shift now is returning to that. So that the higher our dimensional frequency, and that's what the white flame opens up, is that you go back into your original state where you can start accessing that information again. You can start accessing the energy fields again. You can start accessing what you need to access. The doors are opening.
Thank goodness the librarian industry threw you out, Judith. It was meant to throw you out, wasn't it? You couldn't stay a librarian for the whole of your life with all this going on.
Now, I'm a librarian now in a different way. I transmit the information.
That's true. Can I ask you about your work? Can you just say something about your work that's coming up next year? Are you offering the White Flame course again? What are you doing at the moment?
Yes, I am. I'm so glad, because my France book is also in the going to be edited. It's now in the proofreading wing, and France is a country that holds so much, information there that people are not aware of, and that connects directly to Britain, and that connects directly to Avalon. And the story of Avalon is in that book, because that was the third civilization after the Lion Kingdom fell. And it's the Druids. The Druids are not what people think they are. They were highly advanced souls that also held the sacred knowledge, and it was never written down because they didn't need to actually write it down. And so that book brings in that knowledge and connects directly to the Essenes knowledge and to that of the Cathars and the Templars. So that book brings it all together in an illumined way, in the way where that the jigsaw puzzle pieces start coming together in a greater degree. And then I'm busy with my second students of my White Flame course, which I started last year, which is 33 lessons in 5 levels, where we literally go into stage by stage of everything that the White Flame holds in knowledge, in attributes, etc., which you can then incorporate within yourself and start using. Because a White Flame actually is, at this moment, is purifying humanity in the highest degree. And what is happening is we always think about the physical form as the be all and end all, because that is what we fell into with Atlantis. But the White Flame cleanses not only the physical body, but the emotional body, because dis-ease is caused by the emotional body. It's by all the emotional charges that we have not forgiven, that we have not dissolved, that and it's the shame and the blame and the guilt, all that victimhood, that which causes us to cling onto the old pain and suffering. And we now need to let go of that baggage, let go of the pain and suffering, so that we become whole again. So the White Flame is working intensely with the emotional body, cleansing and clearing that, and then purifying And then the next one is the mental body, where we have literally been given false information. A lot of it has been indoctrinated into us, and it goes into the unconscious, the superconscious, the unconscious that is within you, the subconscious. And it's also where our fears lies, and our negative ego, the one that's always denying us and saying you're unworthy of that, playing small, when in truth the soul says you are pure, and the soul is absolutely perfect. There's nothing wrong with the soul. The soul is created perfectly. And then we go into the spiritual body, which needs to be cleared. And often there it is a fear of speaking your truth because you were persecuted in other lifetimes if you did it. So, and then we still have 12 bodies. All in all, there's 12 bodies that are clearing. The white flame is working intensely now. I can see that with my students, how the white flame is working into the deepest memory banks, even the cellular memory banks, because it's busy activating that, bringing it to the surface, what needs to be absolutely now cleansed and cleared and brought into the state of love, because that is what the divine feminine is. She is love. And there's nothing but love, or else is illusion.
Yeah. Yeah.
We are in a tremendous heart opening now, where all this needs to surface, the woundedness, that which we created, the pain and suffering. And it's there for us now to bring into the open and to really let us forgive ourselves and others in the highest degree with loving grace. Loving grace means I know that everyone is a mirror unto me. Whatever I see in another is there within myself. And to acknowledge that and bring it into wholeness. And you see how that has served you to gain in soul mastery, in soul lessons. And then gratitude, the heart opens. And gratitude comes and say, thank you. And you just find there is only love.
Wonderful. That's a good place to stop. Your website's going to go out with this podcast. And Judith, it's amazing talking to you. You have this kind of South African passion, unstoppable passion. And best wishes for your work. And thank you for speaking about this to me. It's a great reminder of so many things, actually.